Well, good morning and welcome back to the channel. We're out here doing another quick shop update because I'm really just trying to kind of bring you guys along on this 430 F1 to manual conversion. Just kind of bring you guys through the journey during the week and kind of just separating it from the long form videos that I'm making on the car so that way you guys have a better idea of what's really going on out here real time. So last week we finished up getting the clutch and throwout bearing and flywheel replaced. We also went through on this car and I got all of the seals replaced so that way it's compatible with brake fluid, because we're doing a full true conversion in my opinion, where these factory F1 cars operate the throwout bearing with ATF and the seals are not compatible with brake fluid. So in order to properly convert everything, you have to remove the gearbox, replace the seals. And we took advantage, got new clutch in there, which was actually a good thing because the existing throwout bearing in this car was starting to leak. And although the clutch still had clutch life left in it, the throwout bearing definitely did not. And the customer chose just to go through and put all new components in so that way he doesn't have to worry about it. And you guys can see I got the car up in the air, and really that's because at the end of last week I worked the car as far as I could on reassembly, and I decided to leave it partially assembled so that way it's to make it a little bit easier for me to deal with the F1 system and the mechanicals on the gearbox before I finally assemble it. So the car is up in the air. You can see that my actuator is actually just hanging down there. That is because I cracked all my bleed screws open there and I'm just draining the lines out. I will leave all my lines attached to the actuator just in case it ever goes back on the car. It'll help keep the lines in the proper position, but also these banjo bolts are specific for the locations that they go to. There's two different sizes and the orifices on the back side are different. So it just helps me keep everything in the proper orientation and position. I chose to remove the fender liner really so I had access to the F1 actuator block up here. And that's going to make it a lot easier while I'm filming this for you guys, so that way you can see what I'm doing. But I need to go through, take the rest of these lines off, and get everything plugged up here. And that's really all that we're going to have to do up here once those lines are off and out of the way. And then really the bulk of my work for the rest of the day, I should say, is going to be getting the new hardware up under here onto the transmission. And let me get repositioned. So we're going to have to get all of our mechanicals up onto the transmission, up onto the side of the transmission. I left the exhaust loose, so it's going to be easy to go back on. And really, my game plan is to get the hydraulics out of the car today. That's going to be pretty straightforward. Get all the mechanicals bolted up on the side of the gearbox. So we need to install our new mechanical shift actuator, which this goes in place of where the F1 actuator was. So I'd like to get this installed. I need my cable bracket installed, and there's also another pivot bracket here. So I'd like to get all that hardware installed into the car. We can see our plugs and everything I'm going to do here for the hydraulics. And really, I think once I have those components in, I'll have plenty of working room in the car with the rest of the car reassembled. So I'm going to work to get all that stuff installed on the gearbox, and then I'm going to kind of pivot back and finish off what was the clutch job. So meaning I'm going to reinstall all of our exhaust, our bracketry, my tailpipes, get everything adjusted. I can reinstall the airbox. And even the engine bay trims, I'll leave the right rear trim off because we're going to need to get to the F1 fluid reservoir. We're going to have to bleed the E-diff when we're done. So I think ideally I'd like to get all of that done today. That is, I think there's a chance I might get more than that done. But if I get all of that stuff done and wrapped up today and pretty much taken care of, I'll have to leave the under trays off the car, but it's going to allow me to get the car down on the ground off of the lift and push it back. And that way I can come out here tomorrow with a fresh day, a clean start. And we have a lot of interior work to do, where we're going to have to be getting the shift tower in, obviously our master cylinder, our pedal, and there's really a lot to do on the inside of the car. So that's what I'm hoping for this week. Or obviously want to make it as far as I can, but I think today it's pretty achievable to get the back of this car wrapped up, finish up the clutch job, have my hydraulics and mechanicals taken care of, and then it'll be jumping the inside of the car, route a hydraulic line and cables, and I think we'll be in good shape. So that is today's plan and kind of a brief overview of what's planned for the entire week. We'll see if we hit our marks or not. So I think I'm going to just jump into it, start making as much progress as I can, and I might bring you guys back here at the end of the day, recap what we got done and what we're looking for tomorrow morning. Morning. It is now Wednesday morning out here in the shop, and well, today's a little bit of a change of pace because you can see that I don't really have my barn doors open, which is something that I really enjoy doing when I'm out here in the shop. I really like to have the shop as open as possible. It kind of makes me feel like I'm outside. And that is because, one, it's quite a bit colder today, and it's actually pretty rainy, which normally doesn't stop me from doing that. However, we are having sewer put in on our street. So most of the houses where I live on our street have been on septic, and finally going in, all in, and getting sewer put in. But that means there is a ton of construction equipment out there, and they are making an absolute racket. So since it's not so hot and I don't need the doors open to keep it cool in here, I have them shut a little bit so that way I can try to minimize the noise that they're making, because it is distracting and just really not that great to listen to. Now, as for yesterday on the 430, well, I'm happy to say that I pretty much hit my goal. I did mention that I was planning on putting the engine bay trims back in, but I really figured it was more prudent of myself to just leave them off, especially over here, because yesterday I really did a lot with the hydraulics and the wiring. A lot has changed. So I think it's smart to leave everything off, still allow myself access until the car's fully running, the conversion's done, and I know I don't have any issues. But for the assembly itself, or functionally of the car, it's fully back together. So we have the exhaust back in and adjusted, which adjusting the exhaust on a 430 can be a bit of a pain. That's all taken care of. Our air boxes are back in, air boots, everything's all sorted up and done up here. So yesterday I was able to take care of our hydraulics. That was pretty straightforward. I actually did all the work through the wheel well, so I pulled the wheel off, the fender liners, had great access, really was able to get the camera in there, show you guys what we did. And up here, really a lot changed on our subframe because there was a lot of electrical that I didn't need anymore. So I took that whole bundle of wires, and you can see it's all zip tied up and just strapped up here right there out of the way. And there was also the clutch position sensor wiring and bracket that were here. I removed those, tucked that out of the way. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I want to leave all this stuff off, is I just want to make sure everything's good, both hydraulically, mechanically, and electrically, before I button everything up here in the engine bay. So everything's sorted up here. However, quite a bit has changed down below underneath the gearbox. So let me get the car up in the air and I'll show you what I did yesterday. All right, for starters, you can see that I have all the exhaust and bracketry back in the car. Now, when we did our initial inspection on this car, I did find that this left-hand exhaust bracket was cracked, which is pretty common. You really need to inspect these carefully up by the welds. They definitely have a tendency to crack. So since we had everything off, I was able to get that new one installed for the customer, which was nice because it saves them the labor. Since it was already off, it just cost them the price of the parts. But the tailpipes are all in and adjusted, which I mentioned earlier, the 430s. It can take a little bit of time and work to get the tailpipes positioned and adjusted properly. The factory does have a special tool. It's like a big piece of phenolic spacer that positions the tailpipes in the opening, both positionally up and down, vertically and horizontally, but also the depth. Obviously, I don't have those right now, so I just had to do the best I could to get them centered cosmetically and visually. But what makes this exhaust tricky on doing the tailpipes is the way they're connected to the muffler. So if I raise or lower these tailpipes over here, it has the opposite effect of the tailpipes on the other side. So any adjustment you make on one side directly affects the other side. So you just take your time, have some patience, and you can get them in and get it adjusted nicely. But I think what we all really want to see down here is our manual conversion parts. So you can see that I have the hydraulic actuator off and we have our mechanical actuator in. So we can see it right there. And I'll drop you guys around where you have a better view. So you can see that we have all of our selectors there and they move. I mean, you guys can see very little effort, moves great. And this is the bracket right here that is going to hold our cables in position. Our cables are going to attach right up there. And so really all I ended up doing here on the gearbox was removing a lot of studs, actually. Removed a lot of the hardware so to allow for some of this bracketry to go in. There was also some existing hardware from the old F1 system, so I ended up removing studs from this location. All the studs here so I could bolt on these conversion components. So one thing I will mention on this actuator housing that we installed from Cambio Emanuele versus the factory F1 actuator is the bosses in this location and these two studs over here were much thicker, meaning they had a lot longer studs. I did a trial mock-up of this actuator and I quickly saw that those studs protruded quite a big difference as opposed to these lower studs down here, which once you put the nut and threads on, the stud protrusion looks pretty normal and natural, and these other ones probably had like 3/4 of an inch of stud sticking out. I did not like it. So I ended up taking those studs out, and I had some shorter ones on hand that I was able to swap them in with and match the heights of the existing stud. So that way it just looks so much better. I mean, functionally it makes zero difference, but it just makes it look like it was natural and it's supposed to be there. In my eyes, if I have 3/4 of an inch of thread sticking out, past this nut and I don't over here, it just kind of screams that something's different and it's not the way it was. So just a small detail that I did, again, functionally zero difference, but I think it just cosmetically looks so much better. And really my goal is to make this appear as OEM as I possibly can. Although we're converting it and it was never a factory stick shift car, I really want it to appear as if it was. That's just my preference on how I do all of my work. So you can see everything down here is taken care of and buttoned up, and all of our hydraulics, which you can't see, are all taken care of over here. So we just have our E-diff lines going in and everything is blocked off at the actuator. So honestly, for today, I don't need to be working on the car up on the lift at all anymore. Today's objective really is going to be getting the car lowered down, and I need it lowered down so I can get it off of the lift, get the doors open, and it's really time to start on the interior work. And I think today I'm really going to focus on the pedals. So I think really that shift tower and getting that shift tower installed is obviously probably the most satisfying part of this job. And I'm not looking forward to working under the dash dealing with those pedals. And I am the kind of person that takes the worst part of the job, gets that done first, and saves the best for last. So with that, I'm going to jump into it, and we'll see how much progress we make today. Morning, guys. It is now Thursday morning, which sadly marks the end of my work week out here in the shop. Now, I do have some work obligations for my other job that kind of tie up a little bit of my Thursday mornings, so I'm getting a little bit of a late start out here. But nonetheless, we're going to be out here trying to make some strong progress in the car and really continue on with this conversion. Now, I did get a small development this week on the car where our scope of work has actually grown. So we're now doing a biannual service on the car, and also, more interestingly, I'm going to be lowering the car. So these cars actually use, I think we all know, a coilover system where it has adjustable spring perches on the shocks and you're able to turn them down to lower the car. And I'll probably cover that in a separate video, because what a lot of people don't realize is these cars actually don't sit very level from the factory. So it's not just a matter of me turning the spring perches down. I'm actually going to do some work, and I'll be adjusting them at different amounts all the way around the car with the goal of getting the car to sit level, because that does have a big effect on the quality of the alignment. The more level the car ends up, the more equal all of the shims are and the better the alignment turns out. So something worth talking about, making a video on, but we're still here focusing on the manual conversion. Now, for our progress yesterday, unfortunately, my day did not go as planned. So I started my day off with really working to get the pedals installed into the car up at the pedal box. And pretty much instantly, once I got our front trunk panel out and all of my vapor barrier out of the way, I went to go put in our clutch master cylinder, which you can see is now installed. But up here on my pedal box assembly, since I have such a late production model car, it did not have the provisions for the hole for the bore of the clutch master cylinder and the mounting points. Meaning I had really two options to address it. One, I could have removed the entire pedal box, sent it to Cambio Emanuele, they would have modified it for me, or sent me back one that's already modified, and I could have reinstalled that back into the car. Now, I'm located in Seattle, Washington, they're located in Florida, so geographically, we're as far apart in the United States as we could be, and I didn't want to wait for that turnaround time, not to mention I have the tools and skills to handle it all here in the shop. So I spent all day yesterday locating where the clutch master cylinder goes, getting the holes drilled out, getting them tapped, getting it mounted. It burned a lot of time. I wasn't expecting it, and it's fine. It is what it is, but it just means I didn't get as much work accomplished as I was hoping to. But we got that done, and we have that installed. You can see the car is off the lift and pushed back. I have the seats out of the car to give myself a little bit more working room. And if we drop you in here, you can see that I have all the pedals out of the car. You can see our shaft up there. So space is pretty tight up here. You can see up there, there's our clutch master cylinder, all installed and positioned. So that was pretty much right at the end of the day yesterday where I finished that stuff up. And I was able to get our existing brake pedal out of the car, and I got it cut down. I think if we take this piece here, so I had this piece here, I cut that off in my bandsaw, and then I rounded my edges and dressed the pedal, so it came out pretty nice. Happy with it. Spent a little time getting that done. So really going to pick up where I left off today. I'm going to work to get these pedals installed into the car. So you can see there's an assortment of shims. Our clutch position sensor bracket, We have our return spring on the clutch pedal, so I need to get all the stuff installed. I'm going to have to work to get the pedal travel stops adjusted, everything back together, hook up our clutch master cylinder to the clutch pedal after I get the pedal travel adjustments done. You can see that I left all the clutch lines out right now. I'm going to come back to those later. So the master cylinder is in. There's no lines in the car. So my workflow for today, like I said, we're going to try to get those pedals in and installed. And then once they're done, I'm going to turn my attention to the shift tower and shifter and see how much headway we can make on the car today. I know for a fact I'm not going to get everything done that I want to, because I still have quite a bit to do with the electronics of the car before we can actually get the car to start once again and function test the shifter and run it through the gears. That'll probably have to wait till next week. So since today's the end of my work week, I'm going to hunker down, work to get these pedals reinstalled, and then I'll bring you guys back at the end of the day. We can kind of recap the week and see how far I ended up making it. All right, it's the end of the day, and how did we fare on the 430? I think we did pretty good today. I encountered, yet again, some more unforeseen surprises that I had to work through, but they didn't delay me too much. In the end, I think where we made it to the end of the day, I'm pretty happy with our progress. So we will start off with first thing this morning. I was working on finishing up the pedals in the pedal box, and that pedal box got me again. So we had to do the modifications yesterday for the brake or the clutch master cylinder. Well, once I went and actually got all the pedals installed this morning, so I got the brake pedal in, I got the clutch pedal in, and I actually pushed the shaft all the way through. And as soon as I did that, I looked and realized that the mounting area for the upper clutch limit screw was not drilled and tapped. And the casting of the clutch pedal was actually blocking it, so I couldn't drill it and tap it in the car. But I did find that if I actually took the downward travel limit screw out of the clutch pedal, I could push the clutch pedal well past its range. It was still disconnected from the clutch master cylinder. Then I was able to drill out that hole, tap it on the pedal box from the inside of the car, and got that new set screw in place. So that wasn't that big of a deal. And then once I got that tackled and I finished everything up, I found that the lower tab or hole for the clutch return spring didn't have a hole there, so I had to drill that one. That one was actually pretty straightforward. I just ended up loosening the brake booster, pushing it forward to get enough room in, got that drilled. So that derailed me a little bit. I think in the end that pedal box burned probably an entire day of my time. If it already would have had those provisions, it definitely would have saved me a day of labor, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. So it's hard to show you because I got the car on the lift, but if I drop you down there, you can see that we now have all three pedals. So our clutch pedal is fully installed. It is adjusted on both end limits of its travel for its upstroke and downstroke. The spring is in, the clutch pedal sensor is in, all taken care of. And really the only thing I need to adjust is the fork on the clutch master cylinder to the pedal, but I'm going to wait until I have the clutch system bled, so that way I can be sure I get any free play out of that system. So we succeeded on the pedals, and that allowed me to move on. And you guys can see we have the shifter in. So I got the interior disassembled, and actually I will note that I pulled out all of the interior in the back, and that is not for the conversion. That is because when we did our pre-purchase inspection on this car, we noted that it has an oil leak up here, and I need to determine if that oil leak is coming from the engine or the power steering pump. So I needed access up here to get all that stuff cleaned off. We're going to be applying some trace powder in there and really just doing some leak diagnostics, so that way we can pinpoint what is the true cause of that leak. That way I'm going to, advise the client of what the actual proper repair needs to be. We don't want to misdiagnose that, and I certainly don't just want to throw parts at the car. So the client had previously approved the diagnosis for that oil leak, but we waited until we're doing the manual conversion to dig into it, because I knew that I had to have the overlapping labor of the disassembly of the interior, and it just helps me out save the client a little bit on the labor hours charged. All right, so I hopped in the car because we all want to see this, and I made my rough adjustments on the shifter cables today, and you can see that we're rowing through the gears pretty nicely, and I was pretty happy with it. Had to make a few adjustments to the cables, nothing too drastic, but I really wanted to get that sorted out and get my rough adjustments done, because I actually did have to make some adjustments down here, and if I were to reinstall everything, that would have actually been a big pain to get everything disassembled. So I can make this adjustment here, because I was actually running out of adjustment at the back of the transmission. So now I know I have adequate adjustment range at the back of the transmission. I'm free and clear to get everything buttoned up up here on the inside of the car. So next week I need to finish up this conversion. That means I need to get the clutch line installed, everything bled. And I also have to deal with all the electronics on the car, so that way I can get the car to the start again. We can run it and run it through the gears. However, I think I'm gonna have to kind of take a pivot on my workflow a little bit, because as we just discussed, I need to get that oil leak diagnosis done before I can reassemble all of the interior. And also I have to do the biannual service on the car as well. So I'm probably gonna have to stop midpoint during this conversion, get those other items taken care of, and then come back and finish up the conversion. But either way, I still have plenty of work ahead of me with this conversion. So as always, guys, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate your support, and we'll see you guys back out here next week.